built in 2017, designed by Getch Partners Architects. Now, here's how it stays upright. These diagonal steel beams above us focus the weight of the exterior walls into the central core. Despite what it looks like, that's actually not that different from how skyscrapers are typically built. And then inside the top of the tower, there are 150,000 gallons of water in a mass damper system. When wind blows against the building, water is pushed against the flow of the wind to balance it out. Now, it would stay upright without the mass damper, but that prevents it from swaying nauseatingly on windy days. And mass dampers are actually pretty common. They were not invented for that glass tower there. A lot of glass skyscrapers have mass dampers. Now, let's look to the left. To our left in the direction of travel is a glass tower. This glass tower is brand new, Bank of America Tower from 2021. These shiny diagonal supports along the river are meant to remind you of the diagonal undersides of 150 North Riverside we just mentioned. These two glass towers are both by Getch Partners, unified in style with these diagonal elements along the river. And Getch Partners is actually continuing the theme. They're also building the new BMO Harris Tower in town, which similarly has shiny diagonal supports toward its base. Now, after the next bridge to the left, continuing to look left, after this bridge, is one of my favorites, another limestone behemoth, the Civic Opera Building. The Civic Opera Building, ahead to the left, was built in 1928. Designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White Architects, it is home of the second largest opera auditorium in the United States, 3,500 seats behind this big blank wall. The building as a whole is Art Deco style with vertical lines and a big setback up there in the middle. And if you look up at the whole opera house, it resembles a giant throne. It has two armrests and a backrest, and the seat faces west. People have theorized that 20th century railroad magnate Samuel Insull, who bankrolled the Opera House and lived in the penthouse at the top for 1 year until he went bankrupt, wanted the Opera House to be a throne overlooking what was his railway holdings empire of the western United States. Maybe. The truth is, Graham Anderson Probst and White probably designed those narrow sections independently of Mr. Insull to allow for a very important practical reason, letting cross ventilation through the windows. Letting the breeze cross through your windows was very important before air conditioning was common in a giant stone building, baking in the summer sun half the year. Now, to our right, in the direction of travel on our right side, right here at eye level under the buildings is the train shed for Chicago Union Station. Look at this train here. You see the Chicago Union Station is Amtrak's third busiest passenger station in the United States overall, and of course a cornerstone of our commuter rail network, Metra, that thousands of Chicagolanders use every day to get between the suburbs and the city. Now, the black square building we just passed is Gateway 1. Its identical sister building here on our right is Gateway 2. They're both by Skidmore, Owings, Merrill, 1960s international style, and all these buildings built above the train shed are designed to be vibration and soundproof because of the heavy noisy trains shaking the ground underneath them, and they actually take in the diesel fumes from the locomotives and release them cleaner into the air above. Now, ahead of us to the right, there is a white rectangular tower ahead of us to the right. That's Gateway 3. It was built by Skidmore, Owings, Merrill. It was originally dark gray, but after it went up, the architects thought it would look better in white rather than dark gray. They removed the gray panels, except for the first 2 floors, and replaced them with white panels instead. Those removable, replaceable panels are called precast panels. And then right next door to it, ahead of us to the right, is that short building with black steel X's along the wall. That was a financial trading floor, the Midwest Commodities Exchange. The tubular X braces were developed by Dr. Fazlur Rahman Khan, structural engineer, to avoid causing visual obstruction across the trading floor with pillars and support the roof along the walls instead. It was an important piece of architectural engineering, and it is still significant today. As you can see, the building today is an example of convenience itself, both a bakery and a gym. And then after the next bridge on the right is a green glass building. This is Gateway 4 by Skidmore, Owings, Merrill. It was originally, this is Gateway 4 by Skidmore, Owings, Merrill, and lead architect James DiStefano. Green to match the river, curved to match the bend of the river to the south. It's another example of contextualism. But look to the left. Ahead of us directly to the left is the world's largest You Are Here map.
Oh, wow.
This is 300 South Wacker Drive. It is by Epstein & Sons Architects from 1973. It was originally a typical international style building with no giant map on the wall, but years later, a new owner put the building on the map by putting a map of the building with the building on that map. It was installed and designed in 2013 by ESI Design. Now, after this next bridge, we're going to look to the right again. Here to our right, this entire limestone-clad behemoth was originally the Central Post Office in Chicago. We call it the Old Post Office. It was built in 1932. It's Art Deco style, designed by Graham Anderson, Probst & White. Now, in addition, it has an expressway going through the tunnel through the first floor of the building. The tunnel the expressway goes through is original to the post office's design. It was built about 20 years before the highway was, though, in anticipation of it. The reason why they had the knowledge to build that tunnel in anticipation of the expressway was thanks to the Plan of Chicago. The Plan of Chicago was laid out in 1909. It was an urban development plan, which always called for a big boulevard or perhaps highway going to the west side of the town where the post office was eventually built. That. Now here's another thing about the old post office. The old post office, when it was built in 1932, was the largest post office in the world upon completion. Now, Chicago has never been the largest city in the United States, let alone the world, but there's one specific reason we had the biggest post office. What would that have been? Catalogs. We were the mail order retail capital of the world. Montgomery Ward, Sears and Roebuck, Marshall Field, Spiegel were all founded here. Lots of other catalogs like JCPenney, not founded here, but operated huge distribution centers in the city, taking advantage of our central location for nationwide shipping across the railway network. And up until the late 20th century, all of those mail order retail orders were going through the largest post office in the world that we just sailed on by. Now, for any young folks on the boat, a catalog is, if you imagine Amazon.com printed as a book. It would somehow get into your mailbox, you'd flip through the pages, call the company and on the telephone and tell them which products you wanted. Those products would arrive, not with 24-hour overnight shipping, but somewhere from 2 to 6 weeks. And despite being physical printed books, they offered a wide variety of goods. In their heyday, these catalogs were often bigger than phone books. And for any young folks on the boat, a phone book is, if you know, I'll move on, but the Postal Service itself moved out of the old post office in 1997. It's a mixed-use office building today. Here on our right side is the new main post office, built in 97. Not much to look at from the river, but it remains a critical piece of the Postal Service's network. All right, coming up next, we're going to look forward and to the left. This is a new residential tower by Perkins and Will going up, the Reed. And then in front of us to the left, there is another curvy concrete building. Curvy concrete building ahead of us to the left. This is River City from 1986 by Bertrand Goldberg. You know, that sounds familiar. Goldberg, same guy who built Marina City downtown, those two circular concrete towers. So we have another curvy building with rounded windows and its own marina on the river. River City here on the left also had its own grocery store originally in 1986, and it has its own marina on the river as well. Now Goldberg favored not only round and natural shapes, but also building cities within cities. Big residential complexes with lots of amenities inside, with room for amenities so that residents could stay for long periods of time, all with the goal of perhaps forming communities within them. That was Goldberg's philosophy behind residential architecture, was providing a place that communities could form within. Now, also, I should mention that four-masted sailing ship we passed is a tour boat called the Windy. It spends the summers out on Lake fishing and Lidstone for the season and winters here in the river. Now, let's look to the right. Directly to our right, there is a shopping center in the distance. And beyond the shopping center, farther to the right, there is a radio tower. That radio tower in the distance to our right, well, here's the thing. I'm going to talk about that radio tower for a surprising amount of time. And that's because it stands on the location where Mrs. O'Leary's barn once stood. Right there is where the Great Chicago Fire of 1871 began. Now, I'm going to tell you all about it in one more minute, but first. In front of us to the right, there is a brick building with 2 smokestacks. That is the old coal power plant for Union Station. Union Station burnt coal to provide electricity for themselves right here at this plant, all the way up until 2011. It's been abandoned since then. It'll probably end up being demolished eventually, but for now it's still sticking around. A neat old industrial building. Actually, you could call it industrial Art Deco style. It was designed by Grant Anderson, Probst and White. Still on land owned by Amtrak. Now, after the coal power plant, to our right, you'll see a Whole Foods sign. And then to the right of the Whole Foods sign, there's another view of that radio tower I mentioned before. So a bit behind us to the right, there's that radio tower. Let's talk about the fire. The Great Chicago Fire began at 9:30 p.m. October 8th, 1871, right where that radio tower stands today. The fire quickly spread east all the way to the lake, and the fire spread north up to 2 miles farther north than where we turned the boat around by Goose Island. The fire spread all the way up to Fullerton Avenue, off the bridge here. The fire spread all the way up to Fullerton Avenue, which was at the time the northernmost, basically the north edge of town. Now, the wind never changed direction. It blew the flames to the north edge of town, where it just stopped at the edge of town. It was not actually extinguished, just stopped at the north edge of town. It burned over the course of 36 hours, October 8th to the morning of October 10th. And over those 36 hours, 300 people were killed and 100,000 were left homeless. Now, also the fire crossed the river. We hoped that the river would protect downtown. No such luck, because by the time the fire reached the river, it was so big and so hot it produced its own wind, blowing burning chunks of wood over the water, continuing the flames on the other side. And I don't want you to think that our fire department was a bunch of no-nos. We had a well-trained, well-equipped fire department. But in October of 1871, I'll tell you about that later, but the other thing is, the fire department was exhausted because they had battled another fire only 48 hours earlier. The Great Fire started on Monday, and before that was the Saturday Night Fire, which destroyed 4 city blocks before it was actually extinguished. Many of the firefighters were on leave to recuperate, which gave the Great Fire a bit of a head start to get out of control before the fire department was back up to speed. And now, it's time to talk about Mrs. O'Leary and her cows. The O'Learys were real people. They had 4 real cows and a real barn, and their barn